Hey everybody, it's Tia Fagan
I'm Kim Gross.
and we are here for our next episode of Masks Off. So if you listened to the last one, we were talking about 100% responsibility. And when we got done recording, we just kicked right into a conversation and felt we needed to address a few more things about 100% responsibility and co-creation. And just with the times that we're living in, and then there was a little more controversial one we wanted to dive into as well. So we're going to start it off as always with the quote, and we decided to repeat the quote that we put in mid-episode or towards the end on the last one, and it's by Covey. Look at the word responsibility. Responsibility, the ability to choose your response. Highly proactive people recognize that responsibility. They do not blame circumstances, conditions, or conditioning for their behavior. Their behavior is a product of their own conscious choice based on values, rather than a product of their conditions based on feeling. So we already kind of talked about that quote, but we wanted to dive in a little more onto that responsibility piece and focusing on the internal rather than the external and noticing how they co-create together. And the first area we wanted to talk about was school. So it's end of June here, and this will probably air sometime in July. So really the school plans will be even more concrete, hopefully. We'll have, but we are starting to get ideas of what it's going to look like over in Wisconsin, the last few weeks, they've started to release some stuff. And I know other states are releasing information. And there's been a lot of scuttlebutt conversation going on. And I know, Kim, for you have an idea for your daughter what school is going to look like. And it brought up stuff for you as well.
Yes.
And so we're
and
not
just to clarify, we're talking about this because of coronavirus.
Correct.
The changes in school because of coronavirus.
And how the end of schooling went and how it didn't necessarily go so well for a lot of people. Yes. And just that transition and knowing as we go into the fall that it's not going to look like school used to look like. It's exactly just not possible. So there's potentially, so in Wisconsin, the state released, I don't know all the details because my kids, are out of K through 12, but there were 3 possible options, I think, that they talked about: 4-day week school weeks, or, so they all go in, or it's a week on, week off, 2 days on, 2 days off, and they switch groups, virtual learning and in-person learning. So just like a hodgepodge of possibilities, and potentially all of high school maybe online. And then for the university where my kids are going to school, it's going to be a mixture of online and in-person as well. And so that's bringing up a lot from parents. Their kids either thrive in online or they don't thrive. What's it going to look like going to school? And I have some of my own thought process on particularly younger kids and just the developmental impacts this is all going to have on their brain development and connection and healing and all of that. But the university had I think it was called a town hall or something. I know the local school district did as well, but since I'm not in that, I wasn't on it. And there was a lot of pushback from parents and a lot of upset parents of A, they want a tuition reduction, or B, what happens if my kid gets sick? How are they going to get food? So again, going back to that 100% responsibility, that everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, I take that back. Lots of people were focusing on what is the school going to do for their student? What is the school going to do about this? And the school, I give them credit. They had a person from the health services, person from parent and family, one of the deans, and I can't remember who there were 4 people on the call. And they were saying, remember, your children are adults. It is their responsibility to put on their mask. It is their responsibility for this, because they're changing the way food service is going to be. It's only going to be available. The cafeteria is only for kids who are living in the dorms. In Madison, it's a college where more people live off campus than in the dorms. And so the food used to be available to anyone. They just paid a higher premium if they weren't living in the dorms. And so there's so many people upset about that, but it's all about safety and contact and all of that. And so parents were very upset, a handful of them. And so it was interesting for me noticing how parents were trying to take over and make everything perfect and just so for their kids, so there was no discomfort should something happen. And the online learning piece of, well, my kid doesn't thrive in online learning, so what are the options? And it's that, but this is what it is right now. And then of course things can change. And so we were talking, and you have information from your daughter's college. You want to share what they're deciding?
Yes. So I will start by saying I was one of those parents.
You're owning it right away, 100% responsibility.
I'm owning it.
I love it.
I'm owning it. My first go-to reaction was to blame the school. It really was. Mm-hmm. So what the college is saying is that for all out-of-state and international students, and she's going to school in Boston, so this is Massachusetts saying this,
okay,
that out-of-state residents and international students will need to come 2 weeks early and self-quarantine. And I give the college credit for creating a Facebook page for parents to go on and ask questions, because big mistake right there.
Lots of finger pointing and blaming.
Oh my gosh. Can I just tell you, this so plays into what we were saying in the last episode, and so great that we decided to continue this conversation, because all this popped up after the fact.
Yeah.
In my head, it popped up after the fact. So I started posting on the Facebook page because my initial reaction was, oh my God, 2 weeks sitting in a room all by herself because they are not having roommates. One of the conditions is everyone has their own room.
For the whole year?
For the whole year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're all in singles, no sharing rooms. Some of the dorms that are set up as a quad or a suite, there'll be one student on the one side, one student on the other side, and they can share a bathroom. So only 2 to a bathroom. Otherwise, other students will have their own bathroom as well. Their own room, their own bathroom.
They have some nice dorms, I must say, if they have that.
Yes. Well, in order to do that, they are putting the sophomores in hotels in Boston.
No way.
At least this is what they're doing at this point in time.
Wow.
So Suffolk is like Madison that you described. Most students do live off campus. So they only house freshmen and sophomores.
Okay.
So that's probably how they're able to maybe do this. However, going back to the self-quarantine, so I start posting. Does that mean she can't leave to go get food? Nope. Does that mean she has to eat all her meals in her room? Probably. Does that mean she can't? Nope. All these and I'm having a fit, but here's the deal, right? I'm complaining and blaming. How could you? That is so not good for her mental well-being. Right. And many other parents also are saying the same thing.
Sure.
It's not good for their mental well-being. Yeah, I understand that. It's not good, but here's the deal. It is what it is. It's like the tornado that we talked about. We didn't ask for coronavirus to happen, or maybe we did co-create part of that too. Who knows, right?
There's I've got
the cause and effect, cause and effect of all these, right? So maybe. Yeah. So we have to own that too. We can talk about even owning that, whether or not we did or did not have a part in coronavirus existing today.
Right.
But nonetheless, let's just say for argument's sake that it's a virus, it's a random event, and we didn't cause it. We didn't create coronavirus. Okay. But it's here. That's the reality. That's the as is. It is here and it is impacting.
And it's not going away.
It's not going away. And everyone involved in these decisions within the schools, I think, are trying to do the best that they can. And let me tell you, there's a lot of pressure on this, at least I'm sure all schools.
Oh yeah.
I can see and feel the pressure that this school is feeling in terms of trying to come up with the best decision and protocol to keep students and staff safe
Right.
and to try to please the parents like me who are
Totally.
complaining.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't do it all. So I have to take responsibility for, okay, it is what it is.
Right.
Will it maybe be difficult for her to spend 2 weeks all alone? Yes. But in the big scheme of things, 2 weeks will go by so fast.
Right.
And then will she be able to completely engage? No. She still has to do some online learning, some in-person. But here's the thing. When we talked about I can choose my response, I can choose to look at all the negatives, or I can choose to look at the positives.
Right.
Right? Here are the positives. She gets to still go to a city like Boston. She gets to move away. She gets to be on her own. She will be able to have 2 in-person classes.
That's pretty great for a freshman. Wow.
2 in person, and then the other 3 will be online or like a mixture, like you were explaining. She will be able to go into the city. She'll be able to leave. She has to wear her mask and social distance. So it's, again, all about how I want to choose to look at or respond to the situation. And then I do have a responsibility in how I choose to show up, because how I choose to show up will have a ripple effect on how it plays out for her.
Totally. Right. Because you're co-creating her reaction and her response as well. Because she could be totally fine with it. Like, yay, at least it's still happening. And if you're like, she'll be like, wait, I should be upset about this.
Right. She feels my energy. And here's something else that I need to take 100% responsibility for, that I mentioned it a little bit in the last episode, and I will say more about that. The worry piece, the anxious piece, that was a pattern for me, that was imprinted in me from my upbringing and generations past, that I know that I co-created anxiety and fear in my kids.
That's a tough one, isn't it?
That one is tough. That and their eating habits, I co-created. So when I see my son eating junk food all the time, or eating fast, or eat any kind of unhealthy eating behavior, I co-created that. Even if it came from my DNA, even if it just came from my DNA, I still co-created, but I also just environmentally and behaviorally created conditions in which unhealthy eating habits were developed when they were little all the way on. And now when I see him or when I see my kids struggle with anxiety or eating or anything like that, it's hard to see that. It's hard to look in the mirror and to watch it and to say, okay, may not have caused it, but I had a part in it.
Right.
So the same thing with my daughter with this college experience. If I'm all anxious, uptight, and wound up, and I'm spewing out that energy.
Right.
And then all of a sudden she's complaining and she's a mess. I have to own part of that. Now she also, because she's almost 18, has a choice too, right? She can choose to take on my energy, or she can choose to have her own. But if she does, I have a part in it.
Right. No matter what, no matter the age, because we're co-creating an adult relationship, the mother-daughter relationship, that you were talking about before in the other episode with your mom.
Yes.
So it's all that co-creation. And so we already have this really unsettling, right? So it's that external piece that we can't control what the school is going to do at all. We have no say so. Our kids have a choice to go to school or take a year off.
That's true. There's another choice.
Yeah. So they have a choice to reorganize their schedule to get more in-person classes. Now we're talking college, because obviously K to 12, you don't have quite the same choice, obviously, in rearranging the online piece. But there are options. There are choices. She can choose to go into that 2-week quarantine irritated and mad at the world.
Yes.
And have that anxiety go through the roof, or she can choose to go, I surrender to this 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks. I mean, it's not the same, but when I was pregnant with my daughters, I was put on bed rest at 22 and a half weeks. And I was not on this conscious path or anything, not consciously on the conscious like healing and going within.
Yes. Yes.
But I did have the foresight at that time. So I telecommuted on a laptop on the couch, so I could get up in the morning, walk downstairs, had to spend the whole day on the couch, and then I could walk back up the stairs. And I know bed rest, I think, has changed. But anyway, I just remember surrendering, like, because I was, how can you do this? And it's like, it's 6 more months of my life.
Yeah.
5 months of my life. That's it. So why get mad at the world? Was it fun? No.
Yeah.
Did I love being alone on the couch all the time? No. So, but if I had resisted that, it would have been miserable, and it would have increased the stress levels in my hormones and everything, and transferred to my babies and all of that. So for her to go in full acceptance, not that she can't have moments of like, this sucks and I don't like it.
Yep.
But she can go into it, this is going to allow us more freedom after 2 weeks, because everyone's quarantining. That's going to lower the risk, versus people blow it off. All of a sudden, everything may be online. So it's also understanding that co-creation of how you enter that quarantine period is co-creating the future. So it's like you were saying, do we have an influence on Corona? Of course we do as a society. We have a collective influence. Did we create Corona? I mean, I'm not an expert. I don't know, but I do feel climate change and encroaching on animals and their habitats. So we're closer to these viruses that are naturally in nature that should never touch us, because we shouldn't be having encroached and taken away their habitat and making them easier to catch and bring, however it all manifested.
Good point.
I'm not an expert, but of course we had a place in it, and having airplanes.
Yeah.
Would this have transferred the same? I mean, I know the Spanish flu happened, but that was in correlation to soldiers and all of that. So there's a lot more movement internationally that wouldn't have happened if there wasn't a war going on. Right?
Yeah.
And now we have airplanes and we're constantly international travel. There's a co-creation piece.
We don't want to give up that travel.
No, I miss it.
You don't want to give up that travel.
Can't wait to travel again. I own that piece. That I could potentially bring a disease back from a place that I travel to. I don't know. But I mean, there's so many pieces. That's what I mean. It's not like one action creates everything. Sometimes maybe, but it can be all sorts of little pieces. It's just like right now, you talking about Florida increasing, and Texas is increasing, and other states. I mean, Wisconsin was on the downward trend, and now we're kind of flat again, and it's looking like it may be going up.
Okay.
And so that's also another co-creation piece with Corona, right?
Absolutely, because you just were mentioning, with Florida, they're not, as a collective, not taking responsibility. They're choosing not to wear masks. They're going into the stores. They're going out to restaurants and bars, on the beaches, and acting as if it's completely gone.
Right.
And now you can see the response to that, which is that the numbers are going way, way up. They're having huge spikes because they're choosing not to. And conversely, in New York, where Cuomo was very strict and very tight with the mandated rules, laws, whatever they were, our numbers have gone way down. And initially, New York City was the epicenter. And now, like, our numbers are really good.
Right. So it's just making those choices and taking that responsibility, and knowing that when your choices have a co-creation influence on others around you. Exactly. And they have the option, right, too, and how to choose and move forward with that. So it's the spider web. And I mean, what do they say? The butterfly flaps its wings on the other side of the world and it can create a hurricane. Co-creation.
I was just going to say, I was going to bring up another example where people are having a really hard time with this coronavirus and wanting to blame. They're all in New York. They're blaming the governor because this coming Wednesday, the gyms and the malls and the movie theaters were supposed to open up in phase 4.
Okay.
And he said no. He said
he had the backbone to say no.
He had the backbone to say no. Wow. The gyms are not opening. The malls are not opening. It was all over the news. The people are complaining. The gym owners are complaining, we
Sure.
did all this work. We did all this. And they probably have, done a
Hmm.
ton of work to prepare for it.
Right.
And the governor still said no. And so then
Wow.
one can easily go into blaming the governor
Right.
and saying, it's the governor's fault that I lost my business, or it's the governor's fault that I can't put food on the table because I can't open the gym or I can't open my store.
Mm.
Again, it is what it is. So what else can you do? I don't know. Maybe you can reinvent. Maybe you can do something different. You still have to take responsibility. And that's so hard for people to hear. It's
Right.
people don't want to hear, that's a hard one to take.
Right.
It just
Right.
seems like, well, I didn't make this happen. I didn't control this. So
Right.
why do I have to do something differently? Why do I have to go get a new job when I spent
Right.
my whole life building this gym or, this store in the mall?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and then you even go deeper and, the conversation of the bills that have been passed or not bills, but, the corona relief packages. So much went to big companies and some, and then the smaller checks to individuals and saying that's not enough and it's unfair. And yeah, and from my perspective, it isn't enough that 500 billion is going unaccounted for, yet people can't put food on their table. And now what? Okay, so these people were
Yeah.
voted into office. It's the co-creation and
Mm,
the influence of dollars in the political system. And we don't have to go into all that, but where we're at today with the government's response is a response reaction co-creation over years.
yeah.
And so it's going to take change to have it go the other direction, should collectively that's where people want it to go, or if they would prefer it's here. So you can vote as an individual or go protest or do, call your representatives. So that's taking action. Does it feel like anything's going to happen? It might not, but what if everyone does that? That's a collective change, and
Right.
so it's taking that responsibility versus saying, why did they do 500 million or billion or whatever it was to all these big corporations and they only sent me $1,200? Okay, so do something. Doesn't mean
Right.
it's going to change, but you have a choice
Yes.
to make that phone call to your representative.
I was going to say, you can't always control the outcome, and it's not about the
Exactly.
outcome. It is about taking the action,
Right. And it may not
right?
turn out the way you want.
It may not. And so then what's the next step?
Right.
Okay. So then what do you do next?
Exactly.
Because why are we saying all this? No. Yeah. What is the reason for saying all this? Is because so that you can feel more empowered,
Right.
right? It's about empowerment. When we said this in the last episode about taking responsibility, taking action
Right.
makes you feel empowered rather than feeling powerless when
Right.
you feel like everyone around you is pulling the puppet strings on you.
Right. Well, we can look at the Black Lives Matter movement right
I
now and
was
the
going to say that.
protesting, right? I mean, change has already started.
Yes.
And that has been tried over and over. It's not like if this is a new movement.
It's not.
It didn't stop. It's just we've had a bigger catapult in because of the conditions of corona, the conditions of all sorts of things and George Floyd, I mean, because what happened to George Floyd has happened over and over and over in the past, right? But it
Yes.
wasn't enough of a catapult to have more people join this movement. So we have to remember that this has been going on forever. And
Yep.
change has not really happened. And now we're starting to see little bits of change happening. So we
The
have
ripple
to,
effect.
right. So we have to remember that we have that choice to stand up and use our voice,
Yeah.
use whatever privilege we have, use whatever decision we want to see, so we can start to think, how can I be a part of that change? How can I help co-create, breaking down systemic racism, changing the system so that people who are losing their businesses, the smaller businesses who didn't get as much of a handout, can move forward. So how can they start to think, what do I need to do? to start to create a more just response to situations like this, because this is going to repeat itself. This is not the last corona potential.
Exactly. What do you think, Tia, is the biggest block for people in terms of taking the action or responsibility? What do you think stops people the most?
That's a great question. I think there's so many things. But I think one is, I've tried it, why bother? Like, they tried it once, nothing changed.
Yep.
Why even bother? Like expecting this magic wand aspect. Like, I tried to use my voice, or I voted before and my person didn't win. And so now why even bother? I'm just one person. So I think there's that, like when we're talking on the bigger collective scale like this. And then I think the other blocks of taking that ownership, it's scary, because taking responsibility means you don't have others to blame. Because it's a lot easier to point the finger than to look at yourself and go, it's all on me. It's me. And then you really have to face all those masks and face the pain. And the pain's the portal to growth and change.
Yeah.
What do you think?
All right. Well, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm going to add another twist and bring in another example that may be really hard for listeners.
The controversial piece?
Yes. This is maybe really hard, because one is going to say, there's no way it's not the other person and that I've co-created. So you ready for it?
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath. What do you say in the situation when a woman is raped?
You want me to be the first one to talk? That was very sneaky of you.
Let me outline it. Let me outline a little bit more. So, how does a woman who has been raped have a co-creation? How is she co-creating?
I mean, every sexual assault, rape is different, right? No situation is the same. No person is the same. So I think, there's stranger rape, there's date rape, there's marital rape, there's all sorts of levels, right? Or, I had a friend whose cousin raped her when she was 10. Family, all of that. And we're not saying that anyone deserves it. Again, this is really controversial. I remember when I first heard this from a teacher, it was like, what?
Yes.
No,
I had the same.
No, how can you, that's victim blaming. You're blaming the victim, so we're not blaming any victim of a crime here.
Or saying they caused it or asked for it.
Exactly. None of that.
Right.
But let's use the example of, I don't know, which example do you want to use out of those?
Let's just say a woman is walking let's say a stranger one. She's just, going about her business and she gets abducted and she's raped.
So you could step back. Again, doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just re-clarifying that. We're not saying any of that, but we live in a world, and again, we could go down that route of the patriarchy and how it's the sexism aspect. Yes. Women cannot walk alone at night.
That's it. Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
So knowing oftentimes, and I can speak from personal experience, I have not had a stranger rape situation, but I have walked alone at night, like in college or in my 20s.
Yeah, me too.
Or even just if I go to Target and I'm walking back to my car at night, I'm very alert, very aware, but I'm alone. You're in a parking lot. You can easily get nabbed. We know people, we're not here to cause fear in this conversation. Right. Let's also put that out there. It's awareness and taking responsibility. So walking alone, you have a co-creation piece, because you could call an Uber. You could, on campus here, they have Safe Walk. You can call and people will walk you back. You can call the police. They will escort you oftentimes or put you in touch with some way. You can call a friend. There's ways to not have to walk home alone, but we're often afraid to say, I need help.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's that weakness. I can do this. I'm not going to let fear stop me. I'm going to walk by myself. So I mean,
Or
that's
it's a
just
thought
one.
yeah. Or it's a thought process. It's never going to happen to me,
Yep.
especially when, for younger
Mm-hmm.
girls, it won't happen to me. They feel,
Right.
young people in general tend to feel invincible.
Right. I mean, I can share, before I went to college, my mom made me take a self-defense class. And
Yes, I was going to say that.
oh my gosh, I did not want to do it, because I was going alone, and I didn't realize when I went there, it was mainly adults, and I was the only teenager. I think I was 16, 17 years old. And it was run by women. They actually are still in operation here in Madison.
That's cool.
And the reason it's only done by women for women is to create that safety. Now, I'm sure they use more gender inclusive language at this point. So anyone who identifies as a female. And I was the only woman in that class, well, I was a girl at the time, who had not been raped. And there were 15 of us maybe. But the bulk of the class,
powerful.
it really woke me up. I still remember that. And one woman had been raped for the third time the week earlier of that class.
Wow.
And that class was about prevention.
Yes.
So that's the co-creation piece. It was about you walk down the street with purpose and intention if you are alone. If you have to be alone, even if you're walking with a friend, you walk with purpose and attention. I mean, there weren't cell phones then, but you don't look at your phone and distract yourself. You don't like lollygag. And then, so it was all about prevention. How can you up-level your ability to not look like a victim? Because
that's a tough one.
It's that energetic place. If you're walking with confidence versus I'm scared, I just want to get home, I'm going to run and hurry, you're picked out more energetically.
Yeah.
And then it talked about, if you were to be attacked, what to do and when to surrender also. So that's another co-creation piece too, is recognizing when do I just surrender, because I'm going to have less harm done to me. And often you disassociate during those experiences to survive. But they're like, if they have a gun, you lay down and you just take it.
Yep.
And that's a hard thing to hear.
That is really hard to hear.
But it's understanding that what you have a choice in and that was what the empowering thing for me was in that class. You always have a choice. You don't have a choice that you could eventually be raped, but you can do a lot of things to help prevent it. And again, this isn't anyone deserves it or they dressed a certain, we're not
yes.
There was no even conversation about how you dress. None. That was like
not even a part of it.
No.
Yeah.
They're like, you can go down the street in your bra and underwear and you can do your part of not acting, with that confidence and blah, blah, blah.
Right. And preventing it.
Yeah. So then what about you? What's your aspect?
Well, so I would agree with what you said on the prevention piece. And I did have my daughter take some self-defense classes as well as she prepares to go to Boston. Mm-hmm. And I do agree, just being aware of your surroundings is so important. She just saw something recently, I think on Twitter. I don't know if it's accurate or not accurate, but how predators are hiding out underneath your car, underneath the car. And as you approach the car, I think they're cutting your Achilles, because if they cut your Achilles, then you can't run. So that as you
horrifying.
Right. And then once they've got that, then they can capture you. So, when you see these things, again, it's not about living in a state of fear, but now it's like, okay, as I approach my car in a parking lot, I will from 20 feet away, because you can see there, I will look underneath to see if anything is under my car. So,
wow. I'm adding that to my list now.
See? So there is that piece of the prevention, but I think I want to just bring in one other point. Yeah. So, okay. So you've done the prevention, you've done what you can do. It happens. Right. Right. It happened. Now what?
Right. It's just like the tornado, right?
It's like the tornado. It's like the coronavirus, and not to minimize or say that like rape is not a horrible thing. Although someone losing their entire home can be very devastating too. So we're not trying to say one is better, but what do you do now?
Yep.
you have a choice. And I'm not saying it's an easy choice and there wouldn't be a lot of work, but you have a choice to let it define you, to let it overrule you and take over your life,
Right.
or do the do the healing work.
Right.
Do the healing work.
Get the support.
Get the support. Feel the
Work
feelings.
on your body. The body releasing. Yes.
Yeah, those are all choices as to what you can do next to heal and move forward.
Right.
To still be able to live a happy and healthy life, right? Versus letting that event or situation or circumstance define the rest of your life.
Right. Not that
Now,
it won't have an influence.
It'll have an
Never
influence.
go away. No one's
It'll
saying,
never go away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
We're
part of
just
who you are now. But
exactly the same as if you're a mom or a parent and you lose a child. It's another one. If you lose a child, to illness or whatever,
right.
That's my worst fear, right? Is
right.
to have to bury a child. It'll always be a part of me. It'll never leave me. And yet I would still have to do that healing work so I could move forward rather than crawling into a rabbit hole and living there the rest of my life.
And there's no timeline. There's no
timeline.
No one's saying, oh, you get raped and you need to process it and be done with it in a week. We're not. No,
that's not what we're saying.
No, it takes as long as it takes. And it's a lot of feelings and emotions and processing, and you have the choice. So that's where you can get your power back. And not give it away.
Yeah. I think that's our intention in all of the episodes, is to help listeners to be able to have more freedom, more empowerment, to inspire, to move out of victimhood and just having more freedom.
Right. And taking 100% responsibility for your experience, not what happens to you.
Yes.
But your experience. And that means before, during, and after.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's a hard one to chew. Like I said, when I first heard this, it was really hard for me to really process that and not let go of but you're blaming the victim. No one deserves that. And if this is the first time you're hearing this, for some of this may be your first time hearing this. For some, you've heard this before because you've been on the path. But just know this is said with compassion and love and supporting you through this journey, because it's it's tough.
It's the world we live in. It is the world we live in, and we have to be aware and accept that reality, And
the more we resist, right?
Yes.
The more it persists. So the more we can accept the responsibility of the co-creation, especially after the fact in those horrible situations, the more we find peace and ability to live in the present.
Yeah.
Whew.
Again, we'll just offer, if anyone wants more guidance or more conversation around that, you can reach out to Tia or myself through email. You can comment if you're watching on YouTube. And of course, if you're listening through podcasts and want to give us a review or a like, we would so appreciate that. But we're here to inspire, help, and guide.
Right. Through the tough times and the good.
Yes.
Right? Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.